Welcome to the Susan Sheehan podcast. This is Susan. And this week I'm joined by Maria Diehn. Maria experienced a late pregnancy loss. She's not alone on this. Her journey is unique, but 1 in 4, and I have heard from a GP that in her surgery, she's seeing 1 in 3 women are experiencing pregnancy loss. That's 1 in 3 women that you and I know. I hardly know a woman that has not experienced pregnancy loss. And yet we're not hearing about it. So Maria is telling her story so that other women can hear the impact, the heartbreak, the grief, the love, and the courage. And I use the word courage because it comes from the French word coeur, meaning heart, that it takes to go through that and to even come out the other side of it. And is it hard to listen and to hear and to feel Maria's story at times? Yes, it is. We're so unused to, we're more used to pushing grief and death away than we are to hearing it and to be with it and to just, and I think that's the biggest thing, to be with it. But also to understand what another woman has gone through. Because you will know someone, whether it is your friend, your daughter, your mother, your niece, your granddaughter, there'll be someone you know that has gone through this or is going through this right now. Or it may be you. And if it is you, I ask you to, and everyone, please listen to it gently with an open heart. Mind your heart. Press pause when you need to. Maria and myself did pause. We didn't pause the recording, but we did take moments where it was needed. And honouring the silence. And honouring the grief and the loss. And the love, the incredible love. I remember a few months ago, last year, I was at a grief workshop and a woman shared, I think it may be a well-known, I'm not sure, but she said, love is where there's no place to put grief. And I invite you to listen to it with that sentiment, that open heart. We all go through grief, but it's a very unique journey to go through pregnancy loss. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Maria, for sharing. Maria, thank you so much for coming in today. It's great to see you.
You too.
So for a little bit of background, Maria and myself, when I very briefly lived in Mallorca, I used to go to Maria for yoga outdoors. Oh my God, it was my most favorite thing ever. Just picture it, sunshine. She used to do yoga, teach yoga by the sea. Like the sea was literally, I can't do feet or meters, but it was literally in front of you. We were looking at the sea as we were doing like a yin and yang style yoga. It was divine, like literally divine. Cycle over. Yeah. But we haven't seen each other since, I suppose, I left, which is 3 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, and but I have been following you on Instagram and a lot has been going on. But before we dive in, I'd love to know, how did you end up in Mallorca? Because you Germany originally, right?
Yeah.
What was that journey?
I don't really like to tell that story because it sounds so romantic, and it wasn't. I did meet someone, but it was my plan anyway, and I don't like to mention it because it sounds like a romantic love story, and we only lasted for 2 years, so it was not that romantic of a love story. But I lived in Australia, moved back to Germany, and Mallorca was something that was always on my radar because I thought like it's a good expat community. There are like lots of people from overseas, and it is very close to Germany, which is why I left Australia, because it was just too far away. It was not possible to fly to a birthday or to a wedding or to, any sort of celebration. So I always had Mallorca on my radar. And then when I did my sabbatical, I came to me. The last thing I did on the sabbatical, I traveled all over the world, was going to Mallorca. And then I met someone, and then I was like, yeah, I'm coming.
That was an easier way in, though, to some extent, right? Rather than having to move on your own and potentially not know anyone.
Yeah.
So maybe it was meant to be. So today we're talking about a journey towards motherhood, I guess. And
Do you know what I was thinking on the way in when we were to record this was, did you always want to be a mother?
No, it took me a long time actually to wanting to become a mother, which was something I then really struggled with in the journey because I thought like maybe I made a mistake. Why did it take me so long? Why didn't I think earlier to wanting to become a mother? But there were so many reasons I didn't want to become a mother. Um, I mean, when I was a teenager, probably I did want to become a mother just because of society, and you think if you are a girl, you want to become a
Mm,
mother. And then later, um, I was too scared to lose my child, weirdly enough. So I thought like, I remember saying to friends, I don't think I'm going to have children because I don't think I would overcome if I would lose them, and the risk is there that a human life ends, you know.
yeah.
So I was like, so that was part of the reason for some years, and then for other years it was the lifestyle. I didn't want to have responsibility. I wanted to travel. I wanted to change careers and become a yoga teacher. Wanted to move to Mallorca, like all these things, and then it was like that was not for me the lifestyle for having a child. Then also the German lifestyle was not for me either to have a child because I saw all these people like working in corporate and like bringing the child to daycare in the morning when it's
Mm.
dark, picking the child up in the evening when it's dark, and I was always like, I'm not going to live that life. That for me is not a life. I'm not going to live that life. So um so yeah, those were literally the main reasons why I didn't want to become a mom. And I remember that when I separated from from the guy I moved to Mallorca for, kind of, he didn't want to be a father, which so we had this agreement from the beginning, even before we got together. And then after that, I had an appointment at a gynecologist, and the doctor said she did like a huge checkup, and she said, "Oh, your fertility looks really good. You should consider like freezing your eggs." And I'm like, "No, I don't want children." And she's like, you might change your mind. I'm like, no, I'm not changing my mind. And I was actually quite upset that she said that.
She
Thinking
stirred the pot, didn't she?
yeah, because I was like thinking, can you not just accept that I don't want it, you know? But it changed so quickly because 2 months after that gynecologist appointment, where I was so sure I'm not gonna have kids in this lifetime, I went for a Vipassana because I wanted to figure out. So I went to Thailand, went into a monastery for like almost 3 weeks, and I wanted to figure out where I want to live, what I want to do, because the relationship ended. So I was thinking like, should I stay in Mallorca by myself? Should I go somewhere else? Like, and that was my intention going into that Vipassana, finding out where I want to live and how I want to live. And I left the Vipassana knowing I want a baby.
Wow.
It was so crazy for me. Like it was not on my radar. It was not my intention. And
How
and
did
it
that
was
come
so
about?
yeah.
Was it just like a very clear message going, or did it
Good
just,
meditation. Yeah, that was the only message I got. I didn't get any. And Vipassana, apparently, if you translate it, means seeing the things as they are.
mm,
So all the illusion, like
just
strips down
disappeared?
and disappears. So
Yeah.
all limiting beliefs I had around children, because that was something that came up in the Vipassana. I had a lot of limiting beliefs. Like I would either need to live this corporate life in Germany where you give the child to daycare like all day and struggle and hustle. I would not be able to travel, or I would maybe have a freer lifestyle, but then not have enough money or things like that. So I had lots of limiting beliefs. And then Vipassana, the meditation, always showed me you can do everything. You know, a child is not stopping you from traveling. You can travel with a child.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
But we're told, oh my God, even as you're saying this, I'm like going, I have so many of those still in my head as well. It's amazing how these believe these stories they like somebody has planted a seed and then they just grow and grow and grow and become so fixed that you're like, I can't even see like that they are the only possibilities. They are the only way to live, right? Like that.
Yeah.
And it's not just like about children either, or having children or becoming a mother. It's like so many aspects. That's amazing. So wait, how long ago did you go to Thailand? How many years ago was this?
I came back from Thailand in January 2008, 19. So that's pretty much 6 years ago.
Just 6 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
And what age are you now, or what age were you then?
I was 34.
Okay. So you're 40 now,
Yeah.
or nearly. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
30, no, it's 35. Turning
Yeah.
35, I think. 34, 35, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big shift then, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what did you do? Did you start to like, what did you do after that? That's like a big revelation.
Yeah, that was a big revelation. So I literally thought, okay, I have to find a man. I was like, okay, I have to find a man that like wants children too. And then I did meet my ex-husband very soon after, I think. It was not much time in between. Well, not very soon, but yeah. Yeah, I did meet him, and actually the way he stood out for me was that we met at a retreat setting and there was a baby and he was very caring for that baby. And I was like, you're the one. So that of course, then you look at different characteristic and like, well, yeah, but it was, I mean, it was at the end, which is probably something we talk about, it was not the right choice. But yeah, so then I met him, and then I told him from the beginning, I'm like, look, because he already had a son who was in like teenage age.
Okay.
And I said, look, like, I want a family, I want a baby, like, I'm only going to date you if you're up for that. He was like, okay. He's like, no, not immediately, but
Yeah, good on you, though, right? There's no point being with somebody and wasting time either. And at
yeah,
this age, like,
yeah,
it's just, yeah,
yeah. So he was like, he's up for it. He was like,
yeah,
not immediately,
yeah,
but he's definitely up for it.
yeah.
And then it didn't take that long until he was kind of ready, until he said, okay, let's try. Maybe like 6, 9 months,
Okay.
something like that. Not a long time. No, not 6, 9 months. I think 9 months, yeah.
After you met.
Yeah,
Yeah,
9 months of being together. And then he
yeah.
said, yeah, okay, let's try for a baby.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened? Yeah.
And then it was a journey, because I'm still thinking that now. I feel like maybe because I had such a long period of time in my life where I thought I wouldn't become a mom. I was so naive. There were so many things I have absolutely still now. I still hear things now where I'm like, where other women like talk about pregnancy and things like that and conceiving, and I have no idea about them. I feel like I was very naive going into that journey. Like,
In
there were
what way?
things. Well, the first thing was that I literally thought you can get pregnant instantly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because there is in our society, there is such a fear mongering around pregnancy, and like teenagers, like immediately they have to take the contraceptive pill. And if you miss the pill one time and people have like intercourse, they immediately have to get the pill after. And like, there's so much fear mongering that I grew up with, that you always have to be scared to get pregnant. I remember when I was at uni, a gynecologist really scared me. I was just there for a regular checkup, and apparently I was ovulating and I had this really big follicle. And he said to me, young girl, if you don't want to get pregnant, you better stay away from any man that's even looking at you.
Jesus.
Because, of course, I didn't think I would get pregnant by looks, but so much fear mongering that I
And
literally thought you could get pregnant. If once you
just,
decide you get pregnant, you get pregnant.
yeah, drop of a hat. And because isn't it amazing that no matter where in the world you were brought up, we can't say it's everywhere, but the majority is this, the warning to the girls, to the young women, do not, whatever you do not get pregnant. Like this. So like there's the thing of like, you hear a few stories of a few girls that had unplanned or unexpected pregnancies. They were in the absolute minority. And then the rest of us, literally the fear of God, especially if you were like brought up in some sort of religion, was put into you in case this would happen to you. So then it's like, it's two things going on. One, like you think like that it can just happen so easily. And then the other is that like it's the worst thing that there's like such a negative vibe that's put into it, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's the most bizarre thing, to the most life. If none of us would be here if women didn't get pregnant, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-boggling. Anyway, yeah. So I think anyone that's listening will be like, yeah, we know that. Like, of course, it'll just happen quite easily, and there's no education around this either.
No.
Like around menstrual cycles or anything.
Yeah. So yeah, that was crazy. So then I was like, so we tried the first months, I didn't get pregnant, and I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like, I actually saw there's something wrong. And then the second month I didn't get pregnant. And then I started to really stress. And we had a bit of a challenge on top of that because my ex-husband had to work away quite a lot. So he was always on work trips. So then it really started to become actually a stressing thing, like to plan that he is there when I ovulate.
Yeah.
And then what if the cycle changes, which can obviously happen too.
Yeah.
And he had a business partner that he went on all these business trips with. So he was obviously not happy that he changed plans so he could be there for when I ovulate, So it was a struggle. And I literally thought after the third time that I wasn't pregnant, I thought I'm infertile because of a lack of knowledge. Because if I didn't know that it could take, or that it's normal to take several months before you fall pregnant.
Yeah, that you thought you were infertile. Yeah, and the putting the pressure on then of having to be there in that window of that 5 or 6 days,
Yeah.
which then puts more pressure on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And thinking that there's something wrong.
Yeah. So that was really a challenge. And that was not enjoyable for both of us. It wasn't enjoyable. There were really times where we were like, what are we even doing here? And then there are also moments where you don't want to have sex, even if you ovulate, And there are also moments where a man doesn't want to have sex.
Mhm.
It's not like that men always want to have sex. Like they are in a similar position. If there is pressure, they don't really feel it either.
No, it's like turning on big bright lights when you're in the middle of, or you're about to have an
Yeah.
orgasm or want to be intimate. It's like
Yeah.
immediately everything stops. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was a challenge. And then sometimes there was a big sacrifice. He did reschedule work things so that he can be here. And then we both didn't feel it.
Mm.
Like, what are we going to do now? So that whole journey already was a challenge. And then, of course, sometimes it was also not possible that he was in Mallorca when I was ovulating. So then, until I fell pregnant, it was actually taking us a year.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was there probably 8. I did look at it. I think it was like 8 ovulations or something, which is completely normal. But by that year, I was thinking, I can't conceive,
Yeah.
like literally. And then I have this medium I get readings with twice a year. And she's so funny. She's very straight, like very
Yeah.
straight, very authentic, very funny. And I walked in And she's like, Kit, do you think you're infertile?
You didn't have to open your mouth. She was just there.
Like bursting out in tears. Like, yeah. And she's like, no, you're not.
Oh, she's a
So she
bloody
just
blessing.
saw that in my
Yeah.
oral in the readings that she does, which was crazy that she said that. And she's like, yeah, you're not. And then and she said the baby is already there. I can already see it in your energy field. And then I did fall pregnant 2 months after that reading, actually. That's why I got
Okay.
pregnant. And then we were like, obviously super excited. And again, I was again with that. So I was so naive that I thought you fall pregnant instantly.
Yeah.
And then I was in a way naive that I thought like, well, if I waited for a year, surely that child is going to stay.
Yeah. Of course.
Like
Yeah.
for me, there was no other thought
Yeah.
than that she would stay.
Mm.
Because I felt like almost, yeah, so that year of waiting was my journey. That was my challenge kind of. And then she's going to stay.
Of course. Like what else would you be thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the pregnancy was, from day one, I would say, was a challenge, even though we were so happy. That I got so knocked out. I wasn't able to do anything. I was nauseous from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed. I was nauseous if I woke up in the middle of the night. I was constantly throwing up. I was going from, I think it was a bit of a shock for me because, like you just said, where we met and everything, I was teaching these yoga classes outdoors, and that was my life. Like all the time, I was active. I was teaching yoga classes. I was doing this. I was doing that. I was like a powerhouse. And then I was the complete opposite. I couldn't move. I was completely exhausted. And yeah, so that was a challenge already, to be like pretty much not all the time, but a big part of the first trimester actually bedridden. Like
And
I would say,
how did life work? Like, because to be your yoga teacher, that is your full-time job. This is your
yeah,
income. You're living you're financially, living solo financially, right? So
yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, that was a challenge, that's for sure. I did continue the classes with other people, so I did have substitute teachers that continued the
Okay.
classes. I also paid them, of course, a good rate though, so it's not that there was like a big sum for me at the end
Yeah, of course.
to live from. I lived from what I still had from the yoga teacher trainings.
Mhm.
Yeah, basically, or from the yoga teacher training, the profit of that. And it was at that time, it was not really the financial aspect that challenged me so much. It was really also almost like the identity of being someone that's kind of unbreakable. I
Mhm.
wouldn't call myself that, because that's how I was, literally. Like,
Did you think that you were gonna like grow a baby and at the same time continue everything at the same
yeah,
pace as
yeah.
but sometimes we do.
Actually,
Yeah.
I did, to be honest. I did, because also that was another topic I was so naively about. I mean, to be honest, now I know that my first trimester was an extreme because my child wasn't healthy.
Okay.
That was not like a regular first trimester that I experienced. But at the same time, the first trimester is the most challenging for most women. And again, it's something that's not talked about, because look at all these women that are in a normal employment situation. They continue to go to work in the first trimester. I cannot see how it's possible. Like, that's beyond my comprehension. to sit 9 hours in an office in your first trimester.
And
I
usually
don't
you
know how
can't
that
tell
works.
anyone. You haven't told anyone
Yeah.
usually. So there's no one like there's no one to go, come on, come in here and take a little break, go home early, like just work from like there's no little adjustments that can be made for you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I know you're saying that yours was unusual in that the first trimester, but I've got a friend, she's just had her baby actually, and she was sick for the first 3 or 4 months every day. Like, and some women do go through this.
Yeah.
It's and have to quietly go through it. I don't know why I say have to quietly, but this is the way things seem to be, which is great that you're talking about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, people go quietly about it. I'm not really a fan of this. I mean, it's obviously up to everyone to decide personally whenever they want to share their pregnancy, and how they want to share their pregnancy. But the reason why women only shared after the first trimester is because that 1 out of 4 pregnancies ends in a loss in the first trimester. And then I feel society has almost created this shame around it, as if the woman did something wrong, that she has a loss, or it's something not talked about, like I would much rather see personally that women actually share naturally about their pregnancies with when they feel like it, whenever they feel like it, instead of waiting for the first trimester. Because imagine losing a child at the end of the first trimester. That's 12 weeks. That is incredibly devastating. With 12 weeks, the soul is already there, you know. You already have like a really strong connection to that baby. And then no one can pick you up
Yeah,
if no one knows.
yeah.
No one knows that this woman is actually going through a horrendous time of grief.
Mm.
So
And to hide it, right? So now you're
yeah,
having to hide your grief, and
yeah,
you're not able to explain why you can barely get out of the bed, or
yeah,
that anything can set you off. Like, and then physically you've the whole other thing going, the whole emotional side of it, the spiritual side aspect of it, and the loss and the grief. And then your body has to go through so much, is going through so much with the loss, depending how the loss has like how that has happened as well. Because and that's another thing that I never knew about either, was like I didn't know that there was different types of pregnancy losses, like that it can be spontaneous, that there's, that you might have to go in and have arranged, and once you do find out that you've had an early loss or late or whatever, wherever the timing is. Yeah, and I think, and it's 1 in 3, I've been told, in Ireland.
oh, 1 in 3.
They say
Yeah.
1 in 5. You've heard 1 in 4,
I
but
had 1 in 4. Yeah.
yeah. And then a doctor said to me, she said, she said what she's seeing is it's 1 in 3. So like that's a really high percentage of. I hardly know a woman that hasn't wanted to conceive and become a mum that hasn't had a loss someplace on her journey, and that's not to I don't know what the word is. It's not, just because it's common doesn't mean it's not entirely, utterly heartbreaking. Because like you say, the woman's already experiencing all the symptoms. Like your breasts are on fire because they're pulsing with hormones. You feel, not every woman, but a lot of women will feel all the movement in her womb, right? And she'll feel that growth and the
Yeah.
implantation and everything. There's a complete connection, even if, no matter how early it is or what stage it's at. Yeah, I yeah, it's there's a recognition that it's there, I think, early pregnancy loss. Um, but
There's
it's
no
not.
recognition about the rest,
No, there is
I
not.
would say. That's the next thing that I had, that was where I felt so naive in a way later. Because of course the first trimester, even though in a way I thought, because it took us a year to get the baby or to get pregnant, I thought she'd stay. But then, of course, in the first trimester, you have this, I think every woman has this kind of anxiety around, is everything okay with the baby? Will there be a heartbeat at checkup? Will there be this? Will there be that? Because there is this whole thing about if you lose a baby, it's in the first trimester. That's all you hear. Like
Yes.
before I was pregnant, I never heard something else. I heard, of course, there was this rare occasion that the friend of a friend of a friend of a friend lost the baby later. But then also there was actually, I remember when I was really young, it was a situation like that where someone said like the friend of a friend of a friend lost a baby. Really, really late, like full term in the pregnancy. And there was even gossip around what she did, maybe. Like, I remember that people were saying, oh, I wonder if she did anything that wasn't good for the baby or things like that. So, so for me, it was like, it was clear once we passed the first trimester, that's it, that baby's going to stay, everything is fine. And then we had an appointment scheduled because my ex-husband wanted to come. And we had an appointment scheduled for doing like a checkup, like just at the end of the first trimester. And that appointment happened to be on our wedding day. So we were like, yeah, that's a sign, everything is perfect. Like the universe would never give us an appointment on our wedding day where there could be something not perfect. So we were like already going in like just in full excitement, manage the first trimester, everything is going to be amazing. And then it wasn't. And then the doctor was like, first he was like typically excited. Then she was sleeping, so he was like, oh, she's sleeping. He tried to wake her up. We were even joking about that she was sleeping. And then it was this thing that you never wish to experience, silence. And of course, immediately something is not right if there's silence. And then he did say something is not right, but he didn't know what. Apparently he measured the neutral fold. Don't know if you heard about that. Again, that's another thing I didn't even know existed, that they measure like the neutral fold to see if like the baby has like a genetic condition or something. That could be, if the neutral fold is too high, there could be a genetic thing. It could be an inflammation or something, but it could be an indicator that something is not right. But also it doesn't have to be, because there's a lot of panic about the neutral fold. And after I did a lot of research, then I actually also found a lot of women that they got really scared in their pregnancy with a big neutral fold. And at the end, the baby was perfectly fine. So it doesn't always have to mean that there is something, but yeah, 90% of the cases, it's a sign something is not right.
Okay.
And that was when the nightmare started, basically. Then I was just so in shock. I was like, I remember I said to my ex-husband, I just want to die. What is going on? And I think,
how many weeks, Maria, are you at this stage?
that was 13 weeks.
Okay.
And then he said, okay, so we have to run further tests to see what she has. And if it's something, where they can do something, or if it's something where they recommend to let her go, or if it's something where I would need to decide whether I would want a special needs child. And that was such an, how do you say, odyssey? Do you have that word in English too? No.
What do you mean by that?
It was such a horrible journey. Everything was messed up. So that doctor then said, yeah, we have to come back and do further testing. And then I instantly went into, we obviously canceled everything, like at reservation for our wedding anniversary and stuff like that, canceled everything. And I just went into like Googling all the things. Like I was just Googling, what does it mean if there's a high neutral fault? What potential things could there be and things like that. And I was complete devastated, still bedridden, plus depressed, then plus researching all the things that our baby could have had. And then I found out that there was like a harmony test, again, also something I didn't know about, or NIP test, it's also called. So this is a test where you can detect through the blood if your child has a genetic condition. Because basically the DNA of the child mixes with yours.
Yeah.
So without having like to have how do you say, like a procedure, like where they really put needles in you or something, you just take the blood, and through the blood you'll be able to detect if the child has a genetic condition.
Detect the blood from your baby?
From me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't, okay. I don't know
So
that.
yeah, I can't think of the English word at the moment, how you call that, not invasive or something like that.
Yeah.
Invasive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Non-invasive.
Non-invasive. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. Non-invasive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a non-invasive way of testing. And then again, that was something that the doctor didn't even tell me. I didn't even know about that. I basically just heard that from my friends from Germany who were pregnant at the same time. And they were like, why didn't you do that test? We ordered that test. Like, I never heard about that test. So then it was the hardest weekend ever. Until we were able to see that doctor again. Then we went in Monday morning, first thing, and said to him, we want to do that test. And he's like, yeah, okay, you can do it. It's 500 euro. You have to pay it yourself. Like insurance is not covering that. We're like, that's fine. Let's do it. Let's do that test. And then he said, let's just do another ultrasound. And then he was like, oh, it's fine now.
What?
Maybe that was a false alarm. The neutral fault is completely fine now. And he was like, do you still want to do the test? And we were like, yeah, we still want to do the test, because that was obviously, that was so weird. He's like, yeah, but don't worry, it's fine now. And so we did the test, and then there was some sort of public holiday though in Spain. And he said, well, it would take a long time to get the results, longer than normal. Normally you can get it within a week or something, but he did tell us already we have to wait probably 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then I had a doula already, and then I informed the doula about what was going on. And she said, come to see another guy. He's a midwife on the island. And she's like, and he has an ultrasound as well. That was the most horrible experience doing that. So we went to that guy. I think he had no clue of what he was doing. And then he was like, he had a neutral fault. So I don't know the numbers anymore correctly. I think up until 3 is okay. And I think we might have been a bit over, like 3.5 or something like that.
Right.
And then this guy, the midwife, measured a neutral fault of like 10 or 11. So enormously. And then he went to his desk and he got out a calculator and he got out an old notebook and he did some typed stuff in his calculator, looked at his notebook, and he said, your baby will die.
Oh my God.
And we were like so shocked, but I'm not even sure if we grieved in that moment, because we didn't think that we couldn't take this guy serious anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In a way. So it was
Yeah.
like, he was like, there's a 90% chance for this baby is not gonna live. So that was absolute crazy. By then, I had contact with another midwife in Germany that was the best friend of a friend of mine from uni who was also pregnant at the same time. And she's like, Maria, all of this sounds not professional, not right, not crazy. I would try and go to Germany and actually get some like different tests and different results, maybe, hopefully. And then I rang a German doctor, German gynecologist, told them the situation, and they said the same thing. It sounds not right. What's going on there right now? And they would also recommend to do further testing than in Germany. And then I did lots of meditations with the doula. And every time I meditated with the doula, the answer was like that the baby's fine. In my meditation, it was always like, she's fine, she's fine. So then I thought there was no need to go to Germany
Okay.
because I was so under the impression she's fine.
So when you say you were meditating with the doula, you were connecting in with your baby and asking.
Yeah, she did some visualizations, and in all the visualizations, I just saw her really as completely fine, which now I know because of course the soul is fine. Because the soul is fine.
Okay.
The soul is not affected by the human experience.
And it's the outcome you want, I guess, as well,
Yes.
isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like it's pure hope. Like you've always
Yeah.
got hope, even when you're being told
Yeah.
by some non-professional midwife that sounds like he was, I don't know what he was doing, but anyway, that even when you're faced with that, you still hope and you just go, no, you still have that light inside of you of hope, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And then at the end of these 2 weeks waiting time until we got the results from that test, I was feeling so positive. I was like, no, she's fine. I don't even need these results anymore. I'm sure she'll be fine. And then the doctor rang the day after he said he would ring, and he was happy. And that's something where I'm still thinking like, what's wrong with that guy? They should train people how to deliver
Yeah.
bad messages.
Yeah.
Like he was like, hi, Miss Dean. How are you? And then he was like, I have some bad results for you.
Oh,
And the moment I picked up the phone, I was obviously super nervous, and he was so happy. Of course, you have all these senses immediately.
of course.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything's fine, because how would you think that someone gives you a bad message with being happy? And then he said that she tested positive for trisomy 18.
What is that?
Which has the diagnosis of not being compatible with life.
Okay. God.
So you have, apparently, it's also something I didn't know before. You have three trisomies, 13, 18, and 21. Okay. And 21 is the one that's commonly known as Down syndrome.
Okay.
And that's the only one that's compatible with life. And with trisomy 13 and trisomy 18, they say the baby can't live, basically. But then again, bear in mind, there's not that much research about all these genetic conditions, because 10 years ago, everyone said a child with Down syndrome couldn't live, or 20 years ago. And now we see like humans with Down syndrome turning 60, so that was what he said. And then he said, I'm too late to have an abortion, but they would terminate with trisomy 18. But if I go right now, basically to the hospital, he could make a call that I have a regular abortion. And after that, if I keep the child for longer, I will have to go through a stillbirth. And that was, again, for me, super crazy, that first thing with this kind of pressure, if I can make a call right now and you get an abortion. I know these people have good intentions. I know his intention was probably to, you know, spare someone from a stillbirth. But at the same time, I don't think how someone can think that I would make a rush decision about my child, which was 14 or 15 weeks at that time already.
And he's only just given you the news. You've only just received the news.
Yeah.
Like,
And I didn't even know what trisomy 18 was. So of course I
yeah.
did research. And then there was like in my case, honestly, there was so many things where you think like, why was it like that? So many unclear things. Apparently, in order to do this blood test, you need to have a minimum DNA, if I remember correct, of the baby in my blood of 10%. I only had 3. So then the German doctor that was waiting for my call after I get the results said, well, that test in Germany we wouldn't have even handed out to you because there's not enough DNA of your baby in your blood to test.
Sorry, to clarify, the test that he's just done, or the test to clarify that that's
The
actually
test
valid?
done.
Oh, the test he's just done. They're saying it wouldn't
would
be
have said in
valid.
Germany that test would have been invalid because there was not enough fetal DNA, and you can have a false positive also if you have like another thing I didn't know about before, which is something apparently very common, a vanishing twin syndrome.
Okay.
So there are actually also lots of, or not lots, but you know, more pregnancy that we talk about or that we know of that are actually starting as twin pregnancies. And then
yeah.
one disappears like very early in the pregnancy.
I've heard that a lot from people that
Yeah.
work with energy healers that say you were a twin. Like a lot more than we hear this, that they're genetic, like that it's got to be in your genetic line. And it's, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
now,
I had on my first ultrasound, I was told on my first ultrasound that they are twins.
oh, okay.
I even have a picture from that where you could see 2 spots in the first ultrasound. And so then the doctor in Germany said the chances are really high with that low of fetal DNA in your blood and with having had the first ultrasound that actually stated twins, that maybe there was a vanishing twin that had trisomy 18.
Okay.
So they said, come to Germany immediately and we do further testing. So, but I was still so devastated, of course, with that, because you think like, can a result like that really be wrong? There's clearly stating trisomy 18 on the paper that he later sent me in an email. So then I flew to Germany alone, which was also very crazy because my ex-husband left to a work trip 2 days before. And that was just horrendous to receive such news and be alone.
Alone, yeah.
That was,
Yeah.
I fell apart here. And then I just organized someone for the dogs. We still had 2 dogs at a time, went straight to the airport. Luckily my friends were really like, you know, don't worry, we take care of the apartment, we take care of the dogs, just go. And then in Germany, I had a appointment then with a specialist 15 weeks at a time, I believe. 15 or 16 even. And she did like a special ultrasound. No, 15, I think it was. She did like a special ultrasound. She has a special ultrasound because she was a specialist. I don't know the English word for it. In German, it's called like a fine diagnostical thing, but I'm sure in English it would have a different term. But just being specialized really in pregnancy and having better instruments and stuff like that. And she did the ultrasound and she said, oh, she's like, everything was fine. All the organs were fine. Everything was fine. And she said, she did, like, later on when we sat in her office, she was like, I don't want to give you false hope, but also I have to say, I've never seen a trisomy 18 baby with intact organs.
Gosh, you're getting
So
so much information and so
yeah,
much conflicting information.
yeah, so much conflicting information. And then she was like, she's never seen it. Normally a trisomy 18 baby, because it's not compatible with life, would already show at that stage of the pregnancy that there would be some organs not fully developed, or there would be a heart condition most of the time, or things like that, or a praying condition as well. And I just didn't have that. So then I left with complete hope again.
Yeah, of course.
And then what was the next procedure? I think the next procedure was that she said they take a sample out of the placenta,
Okay.
but they had to wait another week for it to be fully safe. And so again, there was more wait. Then we waited for that. And then they got the sample, and then you get a result after 3 days. And then you get another result after 2 weeks. Because they create a long-term culture with whatever
Okay.
they take out as a sample. And the quick result is not really accurate. And the long result is from the long-term culture is
Okay.
what they see as like valid medically proven. So then I was so hopeful. I was like, with her statement being like she's never seen a trisomy 18 baby, and she's seen trisomy 18 babies, so it also shows someone that works in that field. It's not that rare.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not that rare to have like a later loss, or like, you know, children that have like genetic conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the phone call, and they said, and the human genetic department said it's positive for trisomy 18. But again, they said that could still be if there was a twin.
Oh,
So it's still only the long-term culture would show if it's really trisomy 18. And then they called me after 2 weeks and said the long-term culture did not develop. It just didn't develop. So I had so many.
what does that mean? What does it mean?
They
It
couldn't
didn't...
test.
Oh, okay.
They couldn't test. So I had so many things where I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why so unclear? Why such a long journey? Why these mixed informations all the time, and this mix of like hope and devastation, like pure devastation. I never felt so helpless and so devastated in my life. You just want to like get your child out to do something,
Yeah.
to help it, because no one can really look inside the belly, even though doctors think they can look inside the belly through ultrasound or these tests. But at the end of the day, we can't really. You don't really see what's going on inside, which was one of the hardest things, to be so helpless and to not know what's going on and to always have this mix. So then they said to me they have to test, how do you call it? The water.
Oh, the amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they said they have to do an amniotic fluid test,
Right.
and then hopefully get results there. And then they did that, which was painful. The first one was actually not that painful. That one was extremely painful. I think I was just so emotionally drained by then.
Yeah, you must have been exhausted.
I was so
Like just...
exhausted. I was
Yeah.
so exhausted. And then the first test, the quick test, came back positive for trisomy 18. And the organs, bear in mind, they still did all the ultrasounds whenever I was there to get the fluids taken. And again, the ultrasounds were perfect. And the doctor said she's never seen a trisomy 18 child with fully intact organs. And then the long-term culture came back. That one developed them.
Okay.
And then that came back positive for trisomy 18 too. And then, I mean, I was so much on freeze by then. I knew I experienced the biggest trauma of my life. I had a sort of awareness about it. But I couldn't process anything, of course. It was just pure freeze, trying to function, trying to do things. I was like a robot. I was not even really be able to respond or do anything. I was just, the doctor said, go there. I'm like, okay, I go there. And I was so exhausted. I couldn't even sit on a chair anymore. I remember that I had to sit, there was one office we waited at, and I had to sit on the floor, and I was leaning on my ex-husband on his lap like that, because I just couldn't, I didn't have the energy to sit on a chair.
Literally couldn't take any more.
No. And then they send us to gynecologist, like a normal gynecologist that I used to see in the past. And another so crazy thing happened, which I'm still thinking, like, what is wrong with people? How can you be so entirely insensitive? She made an appointment at the hospital. And like I said, I was just functioning. I was not there. I was not able to respond to things. She just made that appointment to the hospital, say, go to the hospital. We went to the hospital. My ex-husband was there with me. But he would leave that day to go back to work. So he was just coming for like 2 days, basically. We went to the hospital and they placed us to wait in front of the ward.
The maternity ward.
The maternity ward.
Yeah.
And we were like, and he was getting, he can be angry. He can be like, he's not someone that puts up with things. So he went shouting to the doctors. But for me, it was actually more stress in that moment to then have that as well. And then we went to see the doctor, and the doctor just did another ultrasound, looked at the results, and she said, so you're here to abort? And we were like, what?
Oh, they never explained anything to you before you
No.
left, before they just transferred you over.
So apparently the gynecologist made an appointment at the hospital for me to end the pregnancy.
Mm.
And I'm like, I'm not ending that pregnancy. And they were like, but you have a diagnosis with trisomy 18, that child will not live. I'm like, I would do my research on that. You know, I'm not just letting someone tell me. I mean, what do they think? What kind of lack of motherly instinct women have? You know what I mean? As if someone would say, yeah, the doctor says end this pregnancy, and you're just like, I do it.
Some people do, don't they? Yeah.
I was shocked by that. I was like,
No, I'm with you. I am totally with you. Jesus. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to end that pregnancy.
Yeah.
I'm seeing how things develop. And then she said, but the statistics are there. Like, a child with trisomy 18 is not going to live. I'm like, the statistics also say that a child with trisomy 18 is not having complete, well-functioning organs in the 18th week of pregnancy. So that's already something that is against the statistic.
Yeah.
So then we flew back to Mallorca. I did the most horrible thing that I still regret up to this day. I was running a retreat. And that is something, I don't know. I had this counselor in Germany that they give you from, like, if you get a bad, like, pregnancy result, you get this counselor. And she's like, you need to cancel the retreat. You need to cancel the retreat. You can't work at the moment. I'm like, I know, but I'm running out of money because I didn't work for 5 months.
Mhm.
And canceling a retreat means, and that was a cheap retreat venue. That was still 10,000 euro loss with everything that was involved in that. If I would cancel a retreat now, we talk about 20,000. That's the financial risk you have with the venues and everything in Mallorca and the commitments for a thing like that. And I was like, I don't know how to do it. And then she was like, and then she was like, well, your husband needs to step in. And I agree. He would have needed to step in. He didn't though. So I also knew I couldn't do the retreat. So I did have friends coming that were yoga teachers teaching the actual classes, but I was still the organizer. I was still there. It was a women retreat.
And they want you. The women that are
Yeah.
coming to your retreats want you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I still feel in a way traumatized from that. That I, at the lowest point of my life, where my body was just fully exhausted, where I was like emotionally drained, that I didn't cancel that. That was doing more harm to me than anything. Being in a situation like that, and then I had 2 pregnant women at the retreat as well. And then the most horrible thing was that one woman was in her first trimester, and she did that blood test, that harmony test,
Okay.
and she got the result while she was in the retreat, and they didn't know I was pregnant because I was hiding my belly because I didn't want to share. I didn't feel like sharing at
Of
all.
course. Yeah.
And then she was running around celebrating with everyone that she got the result from this test and everything is fine with the baby. It was the same test that told me that the baby has trisomy 18 for the first time. And that was just horrible. I thought, what, on top of all of that, I'm putting more pain on myself right now.
But you wouldn't have been thinking right. Like you wouldn't even
Yeah.
have been. All you
No.
were trying to do was survive, Maria. Sounds like to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You were in survival mode, like literally trying to
Yeah.
survive for both of you.
Yeah. And then in that retreat though, I actually decided to keep the baby. I did more research, even though the research was actually devastating. It was not that like it was anywhere stated that the child with a full trisomy 18, there are also differences if you have like a mosaic or a full trisomy, and Maya had a full trisomy 18. I thought like I'm keeping her because if there's nothing wrong with her, if her organs are fine, then maybe, she will not be the typical trisomy 18 child.
And who knows? Nobody knows.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Nobody, there's not enough research about genetics and all of that. And like I said, 20 years ago, everyone said that trisomy 21 would end in death, which it didn't.
And there's miracles every day, right?
Yeah. So that was my intention when I left the retreat, to be like, I keep her, but she didn't want to stay. So it was not long after, maybe 2 weeks after the retreat, where I was like, because I did get in the second trimester a bit of energy back, even though I was still so drained and devastated, but it was still nothing compared to the first trimester. And then I came to that point where I was almost like paralyzed. I couldn't walk anymore. I was just lying in bed. I couldn't do anything. My ex-husband had to bring me food to the bed. that I would eat from bed. I would be in bed all the time. Couldn't really walk anymore. Had no energy. And then I was seeing a therapist here, a trauma therapist in Mallorca that was also working like with EMDR and things like that. And I had an appointment with her, and I didn't even know how to get there. First, I thought maybe I have to reschedule with her or say we have to do it online, because I couldn't leave bed. I couldn't walk anymore. And it was very suddenly that I was almost like paralyzed. I remember like sometimes going to the bathroom on all fours because I didn't have the energy to stand or walk. And then I went to see her, and I said, and I was sitting on a chair, and I said, I can't sit on the chair. I have to sit on the floor and lean on the chair. And she's like, what happened? And I said, I don't know. It's since a few days. I have like zero energy and almost feeling paralyzed. And I said to her, I think that was my interpretation of it, that I give all my energy to Maya, that she can grow regardless of her trisomy 18. So that was what I was thinking, that I was giving all my energy to her and I had zero left. And then she did a I don't even remember what she did, to be honest. Was it EMDR? Was it a visualization? Something like that. She did some sort of therapy method where she wanted to go into my subconscious to get a clear idea of what might be going on. And then the result was that she was suffering, that Maya was suffering, that I felt her fight for life.
Okay.
And that's why I was so like paralyzed. It was not what I thought, that I give all my energy to her. It was actually she's not well. She's not right. And then I rang the doula, talked to her about that session with the therapist, and that she reckons that, or that I reckon, I mean, that came out of me, that Maya's actually not right and that she's suffering. And then the doula said, let's go to the hospital and see if that's true. Let's do a checkup, see if they can see anything, if there's anything different compared to the other ultrasounds before, the other checkups before. And then we went to a hospital, and they confirmed that she was suffering. Then she had like a problem with the heart, like then all the typical trisomy 18 things basically came, and her both sides of her brain were like melting.
Yeah.
And so she was dying basically.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know what to do, because of course you don't want your baby to suffer. And if she's dying, and then I asked the doctor, I looked her in the eyes and I said to her, do you think she's suffering right now? And then she said yes. And then the decision, I made the decision that they in how do you say, like induce labor.
Yeah.
That she wouldn't need to like fight.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a moment. Yeah, take a minute.
That was obviously the hardest decision ever.
It's an impossible the decision to let her go versus knowing that she's suffering, isn't it?
Yeah.
A mother's decision to have to yeah. And in a way there isn't a decision, but there is, I guess, as well.
Yeah, and then And then everything went relatively quick. I did read before some like horror stories that when they induce labor it can take days and they might send you back home and you have to come back 2 weeks later. And I did meditate with my uterus. I did a meditation and I was connecting to my uterus and I was speaking to her. And I said to her, I know you don't want to let her go. Neither do I, but we have to. So let's make it at least easy for us, for the body, and not have like a 5-day labor or things like that. And the grief I also felt from my uterus. I mean, that's just such a sacred space in us women.
Mm.
And she was grieving a lot too. But then the labor went very quick, 4 hours. And we decided on a hospital. That's something I was very grateful for, to be in Spain. Because actually there are public hospitals in Spain that are trained in late losses.
Okay.
So they have a whole department that's specialized in it. You have a bereavement midwife, which is completely trained in loss, basically. And to be honest, as horrible as all of this is, I felt like it really made a difference to have someone that knows how to hold grief there with you and that is like kind of, trained in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the sweetest midwife. She was so lovely, and she also prepared a box then with memories, and I had Maya for I think 5 or 6 hours on my chest, which was also really important for me. Like I could, of course, again, it's a super individual decision. If someone decides they can't do that, I understand that as well. But for me, it was very important to actually like have her and lay there with her. And I think one of the things that was most shocking for me were the mixed feelings, because even though she wasn't alive, there is still a lot of love, of course. So there was still a lot of excitement to see her. It was not just grief. There was still even a sense of happiness to hold her after all these months she spent in my belly.
Of course, I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was quite confusing though at the time, because
Yeah.
that's also something I was not prepared of. So first I thought, is there something wrong with me that I'm still feeling a sense of happiness of holding my baby, even though she's not alive? But of course it makes sense, There's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all the hormones that are happening that naturally come after childbirth, I would say. So actually that day in hospital was not the most horrible experience, because there was also a lot of love for her and being able to hold her. And the horrible time really started after. That was really after. I remember it was horrible for me to have her at the cemetery for like 2 days, because we decided on like getting her ashes, or I decided it actually.
Okay.
This is why he's my ex-husband now. He did not grieve her, and I'm not sure if he would even have kept the ashes, or
Oh, okay.
yeah. And
How long were you in hospital for, Maria? Were you left go that day, or did you stay in, or?
next day, because I got really high fever, so I birthed her, and an hour after I got 41 fever. So I had to stay for the night. And that was on a Friday. I gave birth to her on a Friday, which is why she had to stay at the cemetery. Is that what it's
So,
called? Yeah, for 2 days because they could only like burn her on the Monday.
oh, okay, so they had to hold her. Yeah.
And that was already so horrible because even though she wasn't alive, you want to protect. There's this motherly instinct of like protecting and knowing that I was home the next day and she was there. And then I was like, how do they treat her? How do they treat
Mm.
her body? Like how, like that was also a nightmare for me. But that was still not the worst. I think the worst time started 2 weeks after. That's when I really got depressed and like really starting to realize because you're so much in like
Mm.
hormones and functioning and being in freeze and 2 weeks after that's when I started to realize a lot. And then I had another thing that was just at a time I remember it was so I really felt like I lost my connection to God because there were so many things coming together that made it even harder for me. And one thing was, for instance, that they gave me medication to not produce milk because obviously
Yeah.
you produce milk.
Yeah.
And they gave me all this medication and they said I had to tape my breast and it was really painful actually I had to tape it down. So everything was really tight and I had this medication and I was still producing milk. And I was so angry at the universe. I'm like, there's some mothers out there that try everything in the world to get milk. And I have a dead child. And I get all this medication and you do all the things not to get milk. And I get milk. And that was something that I was like really angry about, really furious. And another situation we had was there's an empty apartment next to mine. And it used to be an Airbnb, but 7 years ago they banned Airbnb
Mm-hmm.
in Mallorca. So it's illegal now. So they just sometimes occasionally rent it. It's pretty much empty most of the year. Sometimes they occasionally rent it to like existing clients. Always people without children. There was never anyone in that apartment with children. When I came out of hospital, there was a young family with a newborn baby in there. I could not believe all these circumstances. I was so angry at the universe. Like, I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Have I not been true enough? Like,
Yeah,
and you're still throwing all of this at me, these other things that what you needed most was, can I just have some time to quietly grieve? Or not
yes,
quietly either, but at least have the space to grieve.
yeah,
And there's so many there's so many aftershocks, it sounds like.
yes, yeah. So that was, and one of the crazy thing was we obviously had a room for Maya already, and somehow the acoustics were so weird that when I entered the front door, or when I was in that area in the hallway of the front door, and their baby was crying, it sounded like it was coming out of Maya's room, which is something where I then literally fell apart, like literally lying on the floor, sobbing, crying. And And then I started to have like suicidal thoughts a lot, which is also something I feel like is not talked about enough, because it was not suicidal in a way that I would think like I want to die, I don't want to be here. It was suicidal in a way that I was like, I want to be where my baby is.
Mm.
If she came in a body that's not compatible with life on Earth, well then bring me to wherever she is. You know, another planet, another dimension. Like, I don't know, but then I just want to go there. Then I don't want to be on Earth either if she's not here. So it was in that way suicidal. And luckily, I must say, I knew that this is normal already from a online women's circle that I joined, where someone was actually sharing about a late loss as well, which was 2 years before that. But again, for me back then, it was like an exception, you know. And she did say that she was suicidal, and she was also a yoga teacher, and she was actually quite a popular, well-known yoga teacher internationally. And she didn't work for a year. And yeah, I just knew these two things basically, that she didn't work for a year. She was completely knocked out. She also separated from her partner. And she was suicidal. So I kind of knew that, which kind of was actually good to know that, okay, this is what happens, that you don't think there's something wrong with you, but that's a natural response.
Yeah.
And then I had a checkup appointment with the bereavement midwife, and she said, first question, she said, "Are you suicidal?" And I said, "Yes, I definitely don't want to be here." And she's like, "It's normal." And this normalization did so much. And then I thought, like, why are we not talking about these things? Why? She said to me that most of the mothers that she supports have that. It's a common reaction because you want to be where your baby is. And she actually said, which I found very interesting at that time, she said the only culture she observed that like struggle the least, if you can say so, is the Arabic culture. Because apparently, she said, first of all, the whole family is a community. And she said, secondly, there's no taboo. They know about it. It's part of life. Like, they know about it, and they know about it before that it can happen. Like, there's a lot of information about it, and they support each other. And she said they give the mother, the whole family gives the mother so much space to grieve, because they take care of everything else. And they cook, you know, they sit together, they are like a community, a family. And she's never alone. And she said that's such a huge difference.
It's the normalizing of it, isn't it? As in being able to speak about it, to know that you're not alone, that what you're thinking and what you're going through is other women that have been in a similar situation have also experienced it. But because we don't know about this and we don't talk about it, one, you feel alone, which is it's the worst time to feel so isolated and alone. It's as if nobody, and if you don't know anyone that's gone through it, and or if they don't know what's been going on with you, it's just, and this is why I'm so grateful for you to speak so honestly and openly about it. It's because we're missing this. We're missing this as women, because we don't sit with each other anymore. Like, the only places we sit with each other is in circles, and even then there's usually a theme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we used to sit together and make bread, or I always think of, I don't know why, I always think of deshelling the husks and, grinding the grain for the flour, and that we used to do that together. And we would have shared those stories and been there for each other and our family, and it would have been spoken about and not like, because there's so much shame around women and women's bodies
Yes.
that
Yeah.
it silenced everyone almost.
Yeah. There's so much shame about loss as well. I had people that knew about my pregnancy also in the family that said, don't worry, we don't tell anyone.
Oh,
Thinking like, why? Why wouldn't you tell anyone?
yeah,
There's no, well, like, there's no shame about it. Why? I didn't do anything wrong.
yeah,
It's not that I did anything that I lost my child. Maybe then people would feel shame about certain things, but I didn't do anything. So why not tell anyone? I'd rather have people know, actually. For me, it was hard to tell people because you're not going to someone and be like, by the way, you haven't heard from me for a year because, I was pregnant and I lost my baby late in the pregnancy. You obviously don't do that, but I actually wish people would have known. I actually wish that others would have told people what I went through so that they can treat me accordingly.
was
But
that
there's a lot of shame.
yeah, well,
It's
it's a shame
like,
and the silence, yeah, and that silence, they go together, right?
yeah.
Yeah. What was the hardest, what was the most, aside from losing Maya, a beautiful name for her, what was the most difficult, was that the most difficult, being on your own and people not knowing what was going on with you?
Being on my own. I mean, and also that my ex-husband did not grieve.
Mm.
For me, I think it would have made a difference if we would have had the time to grieve together and to really, I don't know, can't tell you how I would have pictured it, but yeah, literally disappear from life for a month, grieve together, hold each other. And he was 100% avoidant. He left me alone. So he didn't break up with me. I ended up breaking up with him, but he disappeared.
He wasn't able.
He wasn't there. He did like his biggest work trips. He never did work trips for 3 weeks. All of a sudden, he did work trips for 3 weeks. I was here by myself. I couldn't have gone anywhere because sadly, Solomon, my dog, he fell ill 2 weeks after Maya died. And he was just in my care from then on. So it was very sudden. He was very healthy, very fit. And 2 weeks after Maya died, he had couldn't breathe proper. They had to go to the vet. And she said she reckons it's time for it. And I was like, I left the vet like instantly. I was like, what? She didn't know,
Yeah,
she didn't know
yeah.
about my pregnancy because I haven't seen her in the pregnancy. Imagine how much different she would have treated me. She would have known I just lost the baby 2 weeks ago, and that I can't lose my dog right now. And then yeah, but that was also why I couldn't leave Mallorca, because he was in care. Basically, I kept from then on. He died 3 months later. But 4 months later, but for these 4 months, I was carrying him. He couldn't hold his pee and his poop anymore, and all those things, and needed physiotherapy. In a way, though, I believe he wanted to get me out of the house. He had to get me out of the house with the
To
physiotherapy.
care for him.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but that was also why I was like, I couldn't leave here. So I was in Mallorca. I couldn't see anyone because also the maturity of people is, which is something what I realized, they can't sit with grief.
Yeah.
They can't deal with grief. And I think that is this part about our culture, what is perhaps so different to the Arabic culture, what the bereavement midwife shared, that they have grief in their culture. They don't exclude it. They're not saying like pretending it doesn't exist, that
Pushing it away.
doesn't exist, you know. And then people, I was even terrified because sometimes I encountered people that knew about my pregnancy and they knew about my loss, and then they came with this pitying energy. And for me, there's nothing worse than the pitying energy, because it's so disempowering and so belittling that I instantly feel like my chest tightens and I'm like, "Ooh, I need to get out of here." And
What does that look like, that pitying energy?
I wouldn't even know how to describe it, but it's not compassion, because compassion is obviously a complete different story. Compassion is feeling for someone while still seeing that person empowered in a way.
As
Like,
whole.
yeah, as whole, yeah. And then this pitying energy is like, oh, that poor thing.
Mm.
You know, it's like, I can't describe it. I had that in my family. Like my cousin, I still can't see her up to this day from the pitying energy I got from her while I was in Germany. It was, ugh. But I can't put into words. I don't know how to
It's a feeling. It's an energy. It's a
yeah,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think sometimes it's why we don't share when we're going through grief, because we're like, I need somebody to hold me.
yes,
I don't need somebody to be like people are uncomfortable with even crying. Like when you cry, people are uncomfortable with even just that, even just a basic human emotion like that, and immediately want to hug you so that you'll stop crying, essentially.
yes. And that is pity. That can be pitying energy,
Mm.
like coming immediately and trying to
Yeah.
stop someone.
Yeah.
I think a lot of having compassion and holding grief is actually also to do nothing but to be there,
Mm.
to actually do nothing,
Yeah.
to not try to find the most comforting words, to not try to find a hug, but to actually really just be there.
Yeah.
That's it. Being there without trying to fix,
Make
basically.
it better. Yeah. Try
Yeah.
to, yeah. Yeah. No, I get it.
And then I remember a few things about my cousin now, or a couple of things. One thing was, for instance, she would tell me the entire time she cannot believe how strong I am. And that's something you don't want to hear in a moment where you have no other choice but being strong. That was in the time where I was still fighting for Maya's life in Germany, you know? And she's like, "You're so strong. You should be really proud of yourself for being so strong." I'm thinking like, you know, I have no choice.
There's no other option. Yeah.
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 It's not that I choose that and that I now want to pride myself for being strong. So there were things like that, but it's mainly, I think, really the energy.
Yeah, it
The
is an
feel
energy.
of
Yeah.
stuff.
How do you wish it could be? Because, as I say, I don't know anyone that hasn't lost. Yours is different. Yours is different, I think, and not any more or less, as in, you're the only second person I know that has late pregnancy loss. That I only know personally, as in not through this, 5, 10 different, like, but I think for all of it is like, how do you wish it was different? Like, how do we make it different? I guess having these conversations, is it?
I think there could be so many things, having these conversations, normalizing sharing about pregnancy, not like also early, not just waiting for the first trimester. Of course, if it's someone's personal choice to wait for the first trimester to end, that's a different story. But most of the time, it's society pressure of being like, you don't share before, even as it could be bad luck or things like that, which is bullshit. The only reason people or women didn't share before was because of the potential risk of a loss, and then I feel like if women just share naturally when they're pregnant, then we don't have that shame around loss. I think that could make a huge difference. And then having these conversations like we are having now, and then things like having postnatal care.
Yeah.
That was something I did not find, and I was so upset because there's so many women health workers out there. There's so many women that have their websites and their Instagram saying, I work with women, I work with women health, I work with psych awareness, I work with pregnant women, I work with postpartum women. But what about, I mean, imagine the statistic we know. I know 1 in 4 women has a loss. 1 in 3 women has a loss. Where is the postnatal care for grieving mothers? Because I really had actually a lot of problem with my pelvic floor. I think because of the induced labor. And I had problems. I didn't have problems that I couldn't hold my pee, but at the same time I knew my pelvic floor. I felt it. It was so weak. It was so weak. And I really needed like physical support, and I was researching so much and I found nothing. Like all the postnatal care was for women that actually have a baby. And then of course you don't want to join that,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that was something that I felt was absolutely necessary. And yeah, in general, the talking about it, I don't know why we don't do it enough. I don't know why pregnancy most of the time is only shared when it leads in a success, or however you want to call it, like pregnancy, birth, I don't know why the rest is not shared if so many of us are experiencing it.
I think one aspect is fear, as in, I know from my own perspective that if you've had one loss, then there's the fear of the next one, and fear of, and when you've been through one loss, you find out who can hold you and who can't. And then you just tell the ones that can hold you.
Yeah.
And some people can't, they just cannot hold. And it's everyone of every generation, but I think there's a specific generation, the older generation too. I don't know that they can hold it as much. Or maybe if it's somebody that's really near to you, and they don't want you to be going through it again. Like there's I think it's a fear. There's a big aspect of it. But I think you're right. We need grieving. I am seeing it coming up a little bit in Ireland, not on a regular basis, but grieving circles for mums, for loss. But it's not like, it needs to be a whole support network. I think it needs to be and everyone needs to be able to hold it. But that's not, I just don't, that's like everyone ideally would have an awareness level or a consciousness level, all right? And I don't think,
That's happen,
no, but yeah.
But yeah, the being alone was one of the hardest things, like being alone as in like not having any sort of support after. I mean, I had like 2 appointments with the bereavement midwife, but that was it. Then I had the therapist I was seeing, but yeah, that was it. Like I said, I didn't find postnatal care. Then I wasn't able to grieve with my ex-husband, because he didn't grieve. That was really, really hard. And then also I felt very alone with a late loss, like what you said. I felt like, because some people obviously knew, and they said like, I had a loss too at like 9 weeks or things like that. And I obviously that is extremely painful as well. Like I don't want to
I know, I understand.
say
Yeah.
it's not, but it's not the same as
No.
giving birth to your child when the baby's not alive.
Yeah.
And I felt really alone with that. I didn't know anyone else that went through that except this woman, this
Mhm.
yoga teacher in the circle that shared in the circle. She was the only one I knew that had a late loss. And yeah, that was it. And then sometimes people really compared, and you feel so unseen and
Mhm.
heard if someone compares an early loss with what I went through.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was very hard too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the questions, do you have children? So many people still ask, do you have children? I'm thinking, like, for me, it's such a conflicting situation because I don't want to tell a stranger that I have a child in heaven. And
I
at the
know.
same time, I don't want to deny my child. So I hate this question. This actually makes me really angry. If someone just asks without knowing me, somewhere, do you have children? I'm like, you're literally forcing me to deny my child because I don't want to tell you my life story right now.
Yeah.
Especially again,
Because you held your child. That is
yes.
the difference between an early pregnancy loss. Is those of us that had an early pregnancy loss didn't get that. And I've never thought about that actually for somebody that has had to have has had to birth a stillborn. That you've held your child. I didn't think of that when somebody asks you, do you have children? Yeah.
Yeah. So
That,
that was
yeah.
difficult. And then and now because I'm pregnant now, and I went to this like I obviously go to doctor.
Can we just take a pause there? What did you just say?
Yeah.
But you're pregnant. Congratulations. Yeah. Ah, it's amazing. It's beautiful.
It's amazing. Yeah, I'm very,
It's,
very happy.
yeah.
Very happy.
That's just warmed everyone's heart. It has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you were in the middle of saying something. I just wanted to take a pause
No,
there and
yeah,
now that
no, I appreciate those a lot actually. Um, yeah, now of course, I go to like the gynecologist and they asked, is it your first pregnancy? And then it's like more private setting where you say, no, it's not my first pregnancy. But then I have other situations as well. Yesterday I went to a like a prenatal fitness class, and the instructor was like, so is it your first pregnancy? And then I'm like, nope. And then you kind of have to clarify though that there's no living baby, which is so hard. I still don't know how to articulate it yet. But I also, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say it's my first pregnancy when it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then another participant came to that pregnancy fitness class as well, and she said, "So is it your first pregnancy?" And I'm like, "No." And then the instructor said, "Gosh, that must be so hard for you to answer all the time." And I'm like, "Yeah, it is. Although I must say, I'd rather answer in a safe setting like that, that this is not my first pregnancy, than to I don't know, sit at one of my yoga teachers trainings and have a participant ask me in front of 20 people if I have children."
You get asked that?
Yes.
Mm. So let's all take we just all take a breath on that and let that sink in and think about before we ask questions. Especially that question of women of an age, of any age actually. Actually, I
Any
take
age.
that back.
Any age.
Any age. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I know do you know, it's really interesting because because we've had a previous podcast guest and I said to her, oh, but people are only asking out of interest, and they are looking for a connection point sometimes. But after this conversation, actually, no, it's not. What difference does it make? Oh, then it's going to go on to the conversation. What age are they? And then and you're, yeah, we've got to think before we ask a question.
And I think there can be so many reasons why not to ask that question if you don't know someone. It can be that someone lost a baby. It can be that someone lost a child that already was on earth, you know. Obviously, this kind of loss happens as well. Someone lost their child at 10 years old. I had someone in the training that lost her daughter after 9 years. And then imagine what this question can come.
Yes.
Start. And then it can also be that someone tries to conceive for years. Like I've because of my journey, I did so much research. I found so many like Instagram accounts that would share, or like sometimes like forums or threads that would share things. And there are so many women that have a really long, heartbreaking journey to motherhood through different forms, either through loss or through not being able to conceive. And also, it has no age. There are women that struggle with infertility at the age of 25. So, like you said, asking someone at the age of 25, do you have children? That can be extremely painful if they already tried to conceive for 2-3 years, or might have losses, or their biggest dream is to have children, you know?
Yeah.
And then, so I feel like certain questions should be, I still think it's okay if they are asked, but only in the right moment with, you know, the right level of knowing each other in a way.
Yeah, not lobbed out there, basically, in the middle of a conversation, or just that you've just met someone it's a careless fashion, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah. So Maria, we need to wrap up.
I know.
And you probably badly need to pee. Is there anything you want to say before we leave each other and leave the people that are listening?
I would want to say, which is quite cliche now, but I would want to say it, to really just take care of each other. You don't know what someone might be going through.
Yeah. Lovely. Yeah, it's so true. We never know what somebody else is going through, ever. We might sit beside them all day, every day at work, or they might be in our family or our circle and we don't know. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for just being you and being so courageous and heart-led and sharing your story today. And
thank you for the invite to your
I sensed I knew that there must be, thank you. And we wish you and your little one, and if anyone so desires also, to maybe light a candle or say a little prayer for Maya. Thank you for sharing you and her story. Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to get in touch, are you happy for me to share your Instagram?
Yes. Yeah.
If they would like to just reach out and say thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the episode with Maria. And if you are post-pregnancy loss, and it doesn't matter if it's weeks or months or maybe a few years, please reach out to someone. Drop me a message, drop me a DM on Instagram, or email me at mna@susanjane.com, and I'll see if I can recommend you on to someone. There are bereavement counsellors and therapists. There are people. You just may not know them. And if you know somebody that's been through this, or you want to support them as well, just be there for them. I can't say for sure if you should share this episode with them, because I don't know where they're at, but maybe just let them know it's there. Maybe it's not sending it to them, but just letting them know what you heard. Okay. Take care of each other. Speak soon.